The forest was quiet as the man walked alone through the dense trees, his boots crunching against the dry leaves beneath his feet. Each step felt like a hammer striking the earth. He was a man who had once been full of life, full of hope and ambition, but life had a way of breaking even the strongest of men. After the death of his wife and child, he shut himself off from the world. His house was empty except for memories haunting every corner of his home. But as he stood there staring at the woman tied to the tree, something started to crack within him, something he thought was long dead. What had happened to her? Who would do something like this to a woman? The first thing she saw was his face hovering over hers. His eyes were filled with concern. But there was something else there, to an emotion she couldn't quite place. She recoiled at first, pulling away from him, as if his presence was too much to handle. But he didn't move. He stayed calm and patient, watching her struggle with her own fears. And why had he felt this overwhelming need to help? He had been a man who had avoided connections at all costs, yet now he found himself drawn to this stranger who had no name, no past. But he knew that what had started as a moment of impulse had now become something much deeper. He couldn't walk away from her, not now. Her voice was weak, but clear enough to hear. "Who are you?" She was a mystery, wrapped in pain and uncertainty. He didn't know where she had come from or what had happened to her before the woods, but she seemed to need someone to listen. But he couldn't shake the feeling that her story was as broken as his own. He didn't know how to explain it, but her presence stirred something deep within him, something he hadn't felt in years. He had no real explanation for why he had brought her here, or why he hadn't just called the authorities, trying to figure out if he was just another person who would abandon her when things got tough. He only knew that he couldn't leave her out there to suffer alone in the woods. His eyes were fixed ahead, not looking to the left or right. There was nothing to see out here in the wild that would pull his attention, not until he saw it. He kept to himself, mostly tending to the small chores of the cabin, while she remained mostly inside. She was still recovering physically, but as the days wore on, he began to notice subtle changes in her expressions. His voice was steady, despite the fears gnawing at him. In the way she looked at him when she thought he was paying attention, the way she seemed to seek him out in the mornings when the sun rose for the first time in days. She allowed herself to relax and let go of the constant tension that had built up in her over the years. She was safe now, at least for this moment, and for the first time in a long while. She felt a flicker of hope, each of them holding on to the small shred of hope that had begun to bloom between them. The figure, a woman tied to a tree, barely conscious, her limbs bound tight to the rough bark, her clothes torn and her face bruised. He didn't pull away, and neither did she. In that simple gesture, they found something neither of them had expected to find in each other: healing. He froze, his breath caught in his throat for a moment, unsure of what to do. But the sight of her, something deep inside him, shifted something he hadn't felt in years, for 2 decades. The man had lived alone, his heart locked away, his emotions numbed by years of loss and regret. He approached cautiously, every step calculated, as if this moment could unravel everything he had built to protect himself. He couldn't explain it, but something about her made him want to help. Something deep inside him screamed to do more than just walk away. He bent down slowly, his hands trembling as he reached for the ropes that bound her. His heart raced, not knowing what had happened to her or who had done this. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that she needed him. He managed to untie the last knot and pulled the ropes away from her bruised skin, Her body fell limp into his arms. She was fragile, as if every inch of her had been broken by something far worse than physical pain. He carried her to his cabin with ease. Though he had done, he realized how much strength he still had in him. The cabin was warm and smelled faintly of wood and leather. The fireplace crackled softly in the corner. As he laid her on the couch, covered her with an old woolen blanket, and started tending to her wounds. He didn't know why he cared so much, but the pull to protect her was undeniable. He worked quickly, cleaning the cuts and bruises on her face as she remained unconscious, her breathing shallow yet steady. He sat by her side long after finishing the bandaging, his mind a whirl of confusion. It was hours before she stirred and opened her eyes. She looked at him with suspicion as she pushed herself up on the couch. Wincing from the pain, she hesitated before speaking. He took a deep breath, not knowing how to answer. "I'm just a man trying to help," he said, his voice rough like gravel. "Help?" She echoed weakly. "Why?" He didn't know how to respond to that. He didn't have the answers or the comfort she was looking for. The days passed slowly in the quiet cabin as they both adjusted to the strange new reality that had emerged between them. But he was still wary of her, too. He couldn't bring himself to fully trust her, not yet. One evening, as they sat in silence by the fire, she spoke quietly. "I've been running for a long time." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. He looked at her, his curiosity piqued, but he said nothing. He had learned over the years that some stories were better left untold. "They took everything from me," she continued, her eyes distant. "My family, my home, my future." He nodded slowly, though he understood the weight of her words in a way that only those who had lost everything could. "I know what that feels like," he said softly. Her eyes met his, then her gaze, searching his face as if she was trying to read him, trying to figure out if he was just another person who would abandon her when things got tough. The words were simple, but they were the truth. He couldn't walk away from her now, not after everything they had both been through. The woman looked at him for a long moment before nodding slowly, as if she had finally found some peace in his words. As the fire crackled and the world outside the cabin remained still, she leaned, her head against his shoulder. The storm that had once raged within them both seemed too quiet as they sat there side by side in the flickering firelight. But deep down, they both knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much more they had to face together.